Right, in this video we're going to be using inverse trig functions because we're going to be looking for angle measure. Okay, if you'll notice in each of the three examples we're looking for an angle. Here it's angle X, here it's angle Y, here it's angle Z. Okay, we're going to use trig functions, okay, sine, cosine, and tangent to write an equation, and then there's a new thing to use called the inverse of that trig function in order to find or calculate the angle measure. Okay. So in example 4 here, we're going to find angle X. All right, so this side length is 3. This is 5.8. Relative to angle X, this would be the adjacent side, and this is always the hypotenuse because it's opposite the right angle. Okay, so we've got adjacent and hypotenuse, which means we're going to be using cosine. All right, so my equation is going to look like this. Okay, cosine of X equals 3 divided by 5.8. Okay, so you've never solved for an angle like this before. There's a new thing to you guys, and we're going to have to use the inverse of that trig function in order to isolate X. We want to get X by itself in every equation we solve for X, and in this case we've got to use the inverse trig function to make that happen. Okay, so what we're going to do, the next step, we're going to say the inverse cosine, okay, which is this cosine with the -1 up there. It's not an exponent, it's just a way of writing inverse cosine. Our new equation is going to be inverse cosine of that ratio 3 over 5.8 equals X. Okay, now we're going to use a calculator to simplify, and we should get the answer to be 58.85. Okay, I'm going to show you that calculation now on a Desmos scientific calculator. I highly suggest you guys downloading that app or finding it online. It's a really good app for finding these values. Okay. So in example 4, we had the cosine of X equal to 3 over 5.8, and we have to use inverse cosine to find that angle measure. Okay, so on the Desmos calculator, you need this function key first. That brings up the inverse trig functions. We wanted to use the inverse cosine. All right, we want to hit the main to get back where we can put the numbers in. So 3 divided by 5.8, okay? And you can see the value over here that we got was 58.85 approximately. All right, so that's how you do inverse cosine to find angle measure. Okay, let's do example number 5 now. We've got angle Y that we're trying to find. That's going to be this acute angle right here, angle Y. Okay, we're going to use inverse trig functions again. All right, we know the missing angle is going to be found using the side opposite, this value of 5 over here. And we know the hypotenuse is 8. So opposite and hypotenuse force us to use sine. All right, so we're going to use the sine function to write an equation that's going to allow us to solve for y. Okay, so the equation is going to be the sine of angle y equals opposite 5 over hypotenuse 8. Okay, and we're going to have to use the inverse sine. In order to get y by itself, we want to use inverse sine to get y by itself. All right, so our next step is going to be inverse sine of that ratio 5/8 equals y. Okay, we're going to use our Desmos calculator again to simplify that, and our angle measure for y should be approximately 38.68 degrees. Okay, here's the calculation for how to get that value. For example 5, we had inverse sine of 5/8, so again we want to use the function button. Go to inverse sine, input, or go hit the main button to put in our numbers, do the ratio 5 over 8, and you can get the angle measure that we found, approximately 38.68. Okay, and finally we've got example number 6 here. We're going to find angle Z. Okay, we're going to use these two side lengths and a trig function to help us do that. Okay, so to find Z, we're going to use the side length that's opposite, which has a measurement of 9, and we're going to use the side length that is adjacent, angle 12. Okay, so opposite and adjacent force us into the tangent function. Okay, so let's write an equation here. We've got the tangent of angle Z equal to the ratio of 9 over 12. We're going to use inverse tan to get Z by itself. Okay, and use our calculator. So inverse tangent of that ratio 9/12 equals the measurement for angle Z, and that's going to give us a value of 36.87 degrees. Okay, again, I'm going to show you how to calculate that value, and then we've finished inverse trig functions. Thank you, guys. And finally, example 6 here, we want to hit function to get to our inverse functions. We had the inverse tangent. Okay, back to main. The ratio was 9 over 12. Okay, and that gives us an angle measure of 36.87 degrees approximately.